It's a perfect night for mystery and horror. The air itself is filled with monsters.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if you've not seen me before. If you do like the video or you like other videos when you look around, please like and subscribe. The subscriptions do obviously help the channel. And please comment, let's have a little conversation. So, this is a video that's a long time coming. So, a while back, I announced I was doing a Ray Bradbury deep dive. Potentially my favourite author. So, there's a few candidates. But the thing with Ray Bradbury is, I think, everything I get from the other people I love, except for the humorous people. Ray Bradbury doesn't tend to be very funny. But out of the serious writers that I really love, his writing style is something that I think is a cut above the others. But I do have my favourites, so there are a good sort of 5 or 6 contenders. But this whole deep dive was about me reading everything I possibly could by Ray Bradbury, so I can feel like I know his stuff inside out, and then I would feel much more confident in saying that he was my favourite because I literally read everything I possibly could. So the idea is that this will take me a couple of years, and I've got tons and tons of his books. I did an introductory video about this plan I had, and I'm actually on my 3rd book in that plan, and I'm attempting to read it in order. And funnily enough, once I'd announced it and did some research and found out that Carnival was the first thing that was ever came out as an anthology of his work, collection of his work, I discovered that Carnival is either unavailable, or if you had like 200 quid, you could buy it secondhand. But basically, it was just very rare. But they are actually bringing it out next year. They're reprinting it next year, so that's quite cool. A lot of Dark Carnival ended up in the October Country, and the ones that weren't in October Country, I was hoping that they would be in a huge collection of short stories I've got from the Everyman collection I've got. So I'm going to look into that now that I'm in the middle of the October Country. So I've almost finished that, so we'll do a separate video on that. But I wanted to start the actual serious content after my introductory video with the first 2 books I've read. So these are very specific themed books, which is why I wanted to separate them from the others. And I might even do a video on each book as I go along from now, but I'm putting these 2 books together because they're very specific to Ray Bradbury's early career. So just as another thing I wanted to say before I talk about the books, I was really nervous about doing this, so it's really weird. I kind of put off this video, and I've done the same thing for other authors that really mean a lot to me. So you've now seen my first proper mention of Robert Sheckley on this channel, because I did a video where I went through all of my books that I owned by him after reading The Game of X, which was a very surprise find that I had, and it's like a parody of spy novels. And that was the first time I'd done a proper video on Robert Sheckley, and I was going to wait until I'd reread some stuff and then do something that was more about things like Immortality Inc. and Mind Swap and all sorts of things that were touched on in that video. But I was just very nervous about doing it because for some reason, when they're authors that mean a lot to me, I'm a little bit more nervous about doing it right. I want to do it right. Again, with Harlan Ellison, I want to reread his stuff again before I do anything that's really specific, although I did reread A Boy and His Dog, and I did a video about A Boy and His Dog. But Harlan Ellison's another one. And Richard Matheson as well. I was very nervous about doing my video on I Am Legend, but I did do my video on I Am Legend. And even though that was probably about a year ago now, it was still quite a way into my channel, considering I Am Legend is absolutely probably my joint favourite book. So I often think of I Am Legend and Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes as my 2 favourite books. But so doing a Ray Bradbury video on like specific books was a little bit more nerve-wracking for me. I want to do it right. So yeah, I think I need to do it because I've said about this Ray Bradbury deep dive for ages, and even if this is not particularly great, I need to do it. But there will be a separate one for the October country. So my original plan was to do a video on these 2 books, and then I started thinking, oh, I'll do it on the first 3 books and include the October country. But now I'm thinking it's quite a good idea if I do these 2, and then with the next video I'll do the October country and anything else I can find from the original Dark Carnival before it comes out next year. Okay, so what I'm talking about is A Memory of Murder and Killer Come Back to Me. Okay, these are the 2 books I'm going to be talking about, and this is his sort of crime and mystery suspense kind of stories. So as you probably know, he ends up concentrating on fantasy, horror and science fiction. That's kind of his area. So definitely speculative fiction, but certainly those kind of things. So the mystery and crime isn't really something that's typical of him, but it's how he started. So these are the early stories that he wrote. And this one in particular, because this one goes a lot sort of later, but this one in particular is an awesome find. Like, what an amazing cover. I couldn't believe this when I found it. I found this online when I was trying to look to see how full my collection was. So what was missing kind of thing. And I saw this and I thought, oh, I've got to get this. And then I decided to start with it once I had it. And it was brought out in the 80s. So this was a collection that came out in 1984. And these are all collections. Sorry, this is a collection of all stories that originally appeared in the Dime Mystery magazine. So most of the stories are published between 1944 and 1946, with another one that was 1948 and one in 1947. But basically, the whole collection goes from 1944 to 1948, but most of them are from 1944 to 1946. So really, really early in his career. And it's just really interesting. So there's some really good stuff in there, and one of his best stories is in this, and a lot of his other anthologies, to be fair, which is The Small Assassin. The Small Assassin is a phenomenal story. It's very short, but it's very atmospheric. It's very creepy, and it's about a couple who have a baby, and the mother doesn't feel comfortable with the baby, feels utterly threatened by the baby and thinks that the baby's going to kill her. And the father is very skeptical, thinks that there's something wrong with his wife, and it kind of goes from there. And it's kind of, it feels like he's sort of riffing on postnatal depression possibly, but there's a sort of sinister element to it as well. It's just a really cool story. So The Small Assassin is one I really like, and you do see it a lot in other collections of Bradbury stuff. So there's like The Long Way Home. And The Long Way Home is really interesting because it's a story that sets up a man who has a heart condition and has to be very careful about the way he conducts his life, because he's at risk of death from shock and that kind of thing. And there's a character in there that is basically trying to off him, and it's just really, really good the way that it unfolds. So Long Way Home is really good, and I'm Not So Dumb is a really interesting one, because there's shades of Lenny and of Mice and Men in that, because this is like a character talking about how everyone looks at him as an idiot, but he's worked something out that he's kind of like explaining in the story, all based around this sort of mystery, you know. That's really cool. It Burns Me Up is a funny one. So there is sort of a bit of humour in this. It Burns Me Up is a story of a corpse talking about how frustrated they are seeing the scene around them as the cops try and figure out what's just happened in this murder scene, and the corpse is like frustrated because they're not doing their job as well as they could do. So that's quite a funny one. Where is it? The Corpse Carnival is a funny one. I think the Corpse Carnival is an interesting one because of the setting and carnivals and fairgrounds and that kind of sort of the sort of fun fair circus kind of setting. I think it's a really brilliant setting for horror and mystery and murder and that kind of thing. And I'm kind of enjoying that really in the Corpse Carnival story, even though there are better stories in that setting. But that was a kind of a fun sort of setting. The thing with this, I think, is that you can see his fantastic imagination in it. You can see how well the prose is written, and you can see that there's some really good stuff in here. I think his endings are a bit weird in these early stories. So sometimes when you read a short story, usually the best short stories, they end and you go, oh wow, that was a great ending, or that sort of really nailed it. Those last few paragraphs really completed the experience, the journey of reading it in a great way. But sometimes the endings in this book and in the other book, they're a bit like, oh, okay. And it's like the rest of it, the beginning and the kind of concept behind it is what's great, and not necessarily the last page. And often with short stories, the last page really nails it. So that's a funny one. I think he gets better at doing those endings as he goes along. But yeah, that was a really great way to begin this deep dive. And then Killer Come Back to Me, which this was produced in 2020, I think it was. Was it? Hold on, let's double check. 2020? Yeah. So quite recently, I managed to find a second-hand copy. I want to get a newer version of this because I really do like it, and it's a little bit. It's not exactly knackered, but it's a bit faded, and also, to be fair, it's just been reissued in the Hard Case Crime series as well, and I'm collecting a lot of those anyway, and it's a much better cover. So I'm going to go with the Hard Case Crimes version of this, and that'll be the version that I keep of it. But this is really good. There are some crossover with this, so some of the stories in this are in this as well, some of them. But this has got more stories in it. I think as a collection, this is better. So if you are thinking, well, I'll get some of this early Ray Bradbury stuff, this is the one to get, I think. And it has got the I'm Not So Dumb story, which I mentioned. It's got Corpse Carnival in it, which I've already mentioned. And it's also got The Small Assassin in it. It's got some really good stuff that's not in the other one, like Marionettes Inc. Marionettes Inc. is a really good one where there's a man that's... nowadays he would have been cloned, but basically he's trying to have a bit of freedom while also satisfying his wife's needs. So he kind of gets involved with Marionettes Inc., who create a duplicate of him, and kind of goes from there. And the guy, his mate that he's telling him about Marionettes Inc., gets involved as well, and it kind of goes a bit wrong. So that's really cool. The Smiling People is really creepy. That's a very disturbing, atmospheric, nasty and ugly story, all based around domestic murder. And So Died Ryabushinska. And So Died Ryabushinska is a great ventriloquist dummy story. And you can't beat a good ventriloquist dummy story. I mean, I was going to say, actually, that a lot of these would fit in the Twilight Zone. And there was obviously 2 great episodes of the Twilight Zone about dummies, about ventriloquist dummies, that he didn't write. But this is the one that's in here is a really interesting one where it's like a love triangle about the ventriloquist dummy, and it's about obsession, and it's about this detective that's trying to figure out why this person was murdered, and the dummy basically starts revealing stuff about their past, and the guy that's in the firing line is trying to tell the dummy to shut up, and it's really cool. So you can kind of imagine what kind of story that is. So that was really good. And you've got where is it? Where is it? Oh, The Whole Town Sleeping was a really good one as well. And The Whole Town Sleeping is it's about these girls, these like teenage girls that they want to go to the cinema, and they're worried about this serial killer that's around called the Lonely One, and it's just really atmospheric. It's very creepy. It's got lots of suspense in it, and they are terrified of getting caught by this serial killer, and it just depicts a really good. It's quite a lot of small town settings in this, which is quite common for Ray Bradbury, and that sort of sense that they are wandering around this small town, worried about being attacked. That's really good, and you know, again, it's Ray Bradbury's prose that stands out in this stuff, and he's just such a great writer. So yeah, those two books are a really good way to look at those early crime stories. And Killer Come Back to Me, I think, is the better of the two. I think the best stories in that first one are in that second one anyway. But they're great finds. And tell me what you think of Ray Bradbury. What sort of stuff do you know of him? What kind of things are you looking forward to me looking at? Because I'm going to try and do every single book. And I've got loads of his books. I've got over 20 of his books. And it covers pretty much everything he's done. So there are a few gaps which I'll be getting while I'm doing it. So I need to get Machineries of Joy. I used to have it, but I need to get that, and I need to get a couple of other sort of more recent ones. So yeah, let me know what you think of Ray Bradbury from the get-go. I know some people have talked about him when I did my introductory video, and just now and again when I've mentioned him, and I know there are lots of people that love him, quite rightly. He's an amazing writer, and one of the significant people that actually got me into reading in the first place. So yeah, the next video I'll do will be about the October Country, and I'll talk a little bit about Dark Carnival as well. But in the meantime, that's my take on those two books. Thanks for watching. Bye.